Hello, fourth grade. I hope that you are ready to start sculpting your pinch pot plants today. So let's talk about the materials that I have on the table that you'll be using. I have one of the mess mats down on the table. We want to keep the mess from the clay contained in one area. I have a skewer right here, and I also have a container of slip, which is just clay mixed with water. Talk about those both more in a little bit. And then of course I have the clay right here as well. So today what we're going to focus on is making the pinch pot that our plant is going to go into. We're going to make the plants together next time, but we want to make sure that we're taking our time on each of these parts and really doing the best work that we're able to do. So when you first get your clay, the very first thing that you want to do with this type of clay is wedge it. This is really special clay. It's going to go into the kiln in order to permanently harden. And once it goes into the kiln, it can never go back to this soft, squishy clay. So we have to do everything possible to make sure that our project is going to be successful. And wedging it gets all of the air bubbles out of the clay. That's really important because the kiln rather, does not like when there's air bubbles in the clay. So in order to wedge the clay, you just want to move it around in your hands like this for about 30 seconds. Sometimes when you're doing this, you might even hear a little pop and you'll know that an air bubble has popped. Sometimes right when you get your clay, before you wedge it, you can even see a little air bubble on the surface. So these things happen and we have to get rid of all of them. Otherwise, something bad could happen to our project when it's in the kiln, and goodness knows we want to be able to avoid that. So I'm gonna wedge it just a couple more seconds. Okay, so you are going to get a piece of clay about this size in order to make your pinch pot. So before we actually make the pot, I want you to tear a little bit off so that we can make a coil to put on the top. Just set that little piece off to the side. We'll come back to that. And then in order to make your pinch pot, we are going to do some similar things to what we did last year when we made our pinch pot pets. I would like you to start off by rolling your clay into at least mostly a ball. It does not have to be perfectly round or perfectly smooth. This is fine right here. And then in order to make your pinch pot, you're gonna make sure that you are supporting your clay with your fingers on the outside. Then you're gonna take your thumbs on one side and start gently pushing in to the clay. I'm gonna show you what I started off with right here, just a little space on the inside. You are very, very gradually going to pinch that and continue to make the walls of your pinch pot a little bit thinner. I want you to notice I'm not pulling, I'm only pinching. If you're pulling, you're gonna end up with like a plate, and we don't want that to happen. We want something that looks a little bit more like a bowl because we're going to put our plant inside of this. So after a point, you'll be able to kind of set it down on the table, pinch it, make sure that the walls of your pot are nice and even. And guys, I'm doing this gently. I'm not pulling or pushing too hard, just super, super gently to make sure that this can be as consistent as I can get it. All right, now it does not have to be perfectly smooth at this point, but what you can do is just use your fingers, kind of run it over the edge, and get it as smooth as possible. I'm gonna take a moment to smooth it out and check back in with you in just a second. All right, so I smoothed it out a little bit. Like I said, it does not need to be perfect. You'll have more of a chance to smooth it out a little bit later, I promise. What we want to do next is make a coil, so that way we have a rim for our pinch pot. So I'm going to take some of the clay. I probably won't need all of this, but it's good to have a little bit of extra in case you want to do anything else on the outside. And you can start by rolling the clay between your fingers to kind of get a snake shape, and then set it down onto the mat in order to roll back and forth in order to get a coil. So the coil does not need to be super thick. I'm gonna lay my finger next to it so you can kind of get a size comparison. It's definitely skinnier than my finger, but you also don't want it to be super paper thin. That's going to break really, really easily. All right, so since I have my coil made and it's pretty consistent, it's mostly the same size the whole way down, I am going to lay it on top of my pot so I can get a good sense of how big I need it to be. Then I'm gonna just pinch it off right there at the end, put that extra off to the side. All right, so I have my coil there, but we probably know this does not stay on here super securely. We cannot just stick it on there and expect it to stay. So in order to attach any two pieces of clay together, we need to go through a special process that I call the 4 S's. So the first S is score. And score is taking your skewer and making a series of small marks where the two pieces of clay are going to touch. If you think about Velcro, Velcro has those little pieces that reach out and grab onto each other. That is kind of what we are doing here. So I am doing my score marks all the way around the coil and all the way around the top edge of my pinch pot. All right, so that's the first S. The second S is slip, and that is where we're going to put some of the actual slip onto both pieces of clay. It makes it sticky like glue. The slip right here is just clay mixed with water. That's it. You can either use a popsicle stick, or since we're already making a mess and have stuff on our hands, you could just use your finger and spread a little bit of the slip onto both pieces of the clay that are going to be attached. All right, after that, we're gonna do the third S, which is stick. Since we have scored and slipped, this will already stick much better to the top. Okay, but you can do a quick check. It is definitely sticking, but the last S, to make sure that everything is really going to stay stuck on there, the last S is smooth. So you might want to actually be able to see the little seam, the line that separates those two pieces. However, it's a great idea to kind of go in, make sure that everything is nice and cleaned up. You can always use the skewer to clean up the slip that's kind of oozing out of there. That's normal, it happens. So I'm gonna do this, but then in order to really make sure that everything is stuck, I'm going to go ahead and smooth my coil out on the inside by just pulling my finger down over that seam. The clay should be nice and soft and moldable. And by blending those two pieces together a little bit more, it's really going to make sure that everything stays good and stuck together. Now remember, you have to slip, score, stick, and smooth any two pieces of clay that you are attaching both this week and next week on this project and on any future clay projects. All right, I am gonna pinch my coil up just a tiny bit more to make sure that I can really see that shape. Okay, that is good enough for me for today. The last thing that we want to make sure that we do is gently flip our pinch pot upside down, and using the skewer, I want you have plenty of room here, I want you to write either your name or your initials. I am going to write S-T-U-V. I think everyone will know that that is mine then. All right, so we are going to store our projects like this until next week, and the next week we get to add our plants. Good job today, everybody.